Good morning, students. Let's begin our science class of class 8, lesson number 12. This is the new chapter which I am starting today, and today I will explain page number 150, 152 and to 154 of this chapter, that is, and the heading of the chapter is friction. So what is friction? This is very important for you to know what is friction or how you will define the term friction. So friction can be defined as the force which is acting along the two surfaces which are in contact with each other and which opposes the motion of one body over the other. This type of force can be called as the frictional force or friction. In short, there you can also define friction in the following definition. That is, the friction can be defined as the force that opposes the motion of two surfaces which are in contact with each other. So these are the two definitions by the help of which you can very easily define the term friction. Once again I am repeating so that it becomes clear to you that friction can be defined as the force which is acting along the two surfaces which are in contact with each other, and this force also opposes the motion of one body over the other body. This is what is called as frictional force or friction. And in the second definition, in short, you can define friction as the force that opposes the motion of two surfaces which are in contact with each other. I hope you have understood what is friction. Now I will explain you what is the cause which is resulting in or causing friction. So the interlocking of the irregularities which are present on the objects when it tries to move over one another, then it opposes the motion of a body trying to move and give rise to a friction. What is friction? This is also important for you. Friction are the roughness of the surface which can be seen through a microscope in the form of tiny hills and valleys. So what are irregularities? Irregularities are the roughness of the surface which can be seen through a microscope in the form of tiny hills and valleys. And due to the interlocking of these irregularities, it results in the cause of friction. So, in short, you understand that is the interlocking of the irregularities which are present on the surface of the objects, which can be either smooth, which is having either a smooth surface, or they are having rough surface. Both the type of objects, they are having several irregularities in the form of tiny hills or valleys, and when the surface of one body moves over the surface of another object, then these irregularities, they undergo interlocking and thereby result in causing the friction. Next thing which is important for you to know, that is what are the various factors which affect friction. So there are two factors which are very much responsible for affecting the friction. First is the nature of the surface in contact with each other. Here, nature of the surface means that is the surface of the object may be either smooth or it is rough. So the objects which are having rough surface, they produce more friction as compared to the surfaces which have a smooth surface. Or the objects which have a smooth surface, they produce less friction as compared to the objects, that is the rough objects, their surface produce more friction. And the second factor which affects the friction is the weight of the body. So these are the two factors which affect friction. First, the nature of the surface which are in contact with each other, and second, on the weight or mass of the body. Now next topic which I am going to explain, that is the types of friction. So in your syllabus 4 types of frictions are given, which I will explain one by one. First, you should understand how many types of frictions are there in your syllabus. That is 4 types of frictions are there. That is static friction, then limiting friction, then rolling friction, and the last type of friction, that is the sliding friction. So these are the 4 types of friction about which I will explain you one by one. So let us begin with the first type of friction, that is the static friction. So how you can define static friction? That is, the static friction can be defined as the force that exists between can be defined as the friction that exists between the two objects which are at rest relative to each other. So how you can define friction? Static friction, that is, the static friction can be defined as the friction that exists between the two objects which are at rest relative to each other. Now I will explain the second type of friction, that is the rolling friction. So what is rolling friction? Rolling friction can be defined as the opposing force that resists the motion when body of one object rolls over the surface of another object. For example, when a wheel or circular disc rolls over a flat surface, the opposing force here is called as the rolling friction, which results in stopping the wheel if we stop beating the wheel with the stick due to the friction, rolling friction. Then the third type of friction is the limiting friction, and limiting friction is the maximum opposing force that comes into action when the body is at the verge of moving over the surface of another body. So how you will define what is limiting friction? Limiting friction is the maximum opposing force that comes into action when the body is at the verge of moving over the surface of another body. And the last type of friction is the sliding friction. So what is sliding friction, or how you can define the sliding friction? That is, the sliding friction can be defined as the opposing force that comes into action when the surface of one body slides over the surface of another object or body. For example, when wooden block is moved, this is very good example of sliding friction.